marriage. Why is having sex out of wedlock not the right thing for us to do? The first scenario is simple. The Bible tells us that it's against God's wishes. Multiple times in the Bible, it shows us examples of what we should not do. Hebrews 13:4 considers sex outside of marriage to be immoral. Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual morality, that each one of you know how to control his own body, in holiness and honor, not in the passion of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. So if nothing else, do we really want to go against the will of God? Sex before marriage might set you up for divorce. Through a recent study, it shows that people who have only one sex partner shows extremely low divorce rates 5 years into marriage. If you notice, women who married in the 2000s, if they had no sex partner before marriage, only had 6% chance of divorce, and only one partner increased your chance of divorce by 1 in 5 chances at a 20% rate. There are some emotional dangers of sex outside of marriage. Worry about pregnancy and disease. Quote, I see kids going to the nursing school, crying a day after their first sexual experience, and wanting to be tested for AIDS. For some, it's enough to cause them to stay away from the further sexual involvement. Russell Hink, a public school health education coordinator, says, regret. Both guys and girls can suffer sharp regret following a sexual relationship, but girls usually are more vulnerable. One abstinent speaker asks his teen audience, what happens when a girl has sex with a boy? She typically feels closer to him. You may think it would be the same way with a boy, but not necessarily. Research, in fact, finds a gender difference. Women are likely to have sex to strengthen relationships and increase intimacy, whereas men are likely to have sex to gain physical pleasure. A girl who sees sex as a way to show you care may feel cheated and used when the boy doesn't show a greater romantic interest after the sexual experience. Says a 15-year-old girl, quote, I didn't expect the guy to marry me, but I never expected him to avoid me at school. Guilt. Guilt is a special form of regret, a strong sense of having something something morally wrong. Guilt can be a healthy moral experience if you take it as a sign that your conscience is alive and working. As a reason to avoid in the future the behavior that caused you to have a guilty conscience. Girls are more likely than guys to report guilt after a first sexual experience, and the guilt is greater if the experience occurred under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Both guys and girls are more likely to report guilt if their first intercourse occurred with a casual partner. Emotional dangers continued. Loss of self-esteem or self-respect. Sometimes the loss of self-esteem after uncommitted sex leads to a person into further casual sex, leading to further loss of self-esteem and an oppressive cycle from which it may be hard to break free. Depression or suicide. Given what we know about the emotional aftermath of broken sexual relationships, it's reasonable to think the pain from such breakups is a factor in the depression and suicide deaths of some young people. Research confirms this link. A study in pediatrics found that the attempted suicide rate for sexual experienced girls between the ages 12 and 16 is 6 times higher than it is for the girls that age who are virgins. Recently, the National Longitudinal Study of Adolescent Health found that both boys and girls who are sexually active are more likely to feel depressed and attempt suicide than peers who are not sexually active. Ruined relationships. Sex can turn a good relationship bad. Other dimensions of the relationship soon stop developing, negative emotions enter the picture, and eventually they poison the relationship. Says a young man who identifies himself as a 21-year-old virgin. I've seen too many of my friends break up after their relationship turns physical. When you use sex too early, it will block other means of communicating love and can stunt the balanced growth of a relationship. Marital satisfaction and sexual experience. Researchers analyzed data from the National Relationship Development Study, tracking more than 1,000 Americans 18 to 34 who were not married but were in a relationship in 2007 to 2008. They followed them for 5 years, although 11 waves of data through 11 waves of data collected, they looked closely at 418 who married. The study was controlled for race and the ethnicity, years of education, personal income, and how religious subjects were. The report notes a changed sequence of events when it comes to marriage. Courtship once led to marriage, sex and having children, but today as many as 90% of couples reportedly have premarital sex, and close to 40% of babies are born to unmarried parents. Couples are also more likely to live together before marriage. The individual relationships histories of two people who will later marry is important, helping shape how satisfying their married life together will be, the study found. Marital satisfaction and sexual experience continued. Men and women who had other sexual partners before marrying each other reported less marital satisfaction than those who slept only with each other. In addition, marital satisfaction was higher for women who had fewer sexual partners, and marital dissatisfaction was greater in proportion to the number of partners. Having been married previously also corresponded to lower marital quality. The average respondent had 5 sexual partners before marrying. Only 23% of those who got married had sex only with the future spouse. Quote, it's not that when you say, I do, all the other options disappear from life or mind, but you have decided that this is the one. The key factor is how you manage your sense of alternatives and how good you think those alternatives are. Stanley said he and Rhodes speculate that having had more partners provided fodder for comparison and reminds one there are other choices. Plus, someone with a greater history of relationships also has experienced breakups and may have developed skills not only to cope with them but to facilitate them. Children from previous relationships also sometimes complicate future marriage. The result found, quote, in general, couples who wait to have sex later in their relationship report higher levels of marital quality. The study said, quote, there are many possible explanations for this link. One is that some people who are already more likely to struggle in romantic relationships, such as people who are impulsive or insecure, are also more likely to have casual sex. It's also possible, the study noted, that relationships that began as hookups may involve partners not as well matched on factors that promote happy marriages, such as shared values, interests, and perspectives. Unintended pregnancy is a possible consequence. It is a very real possibility that even when protective measures are taken, pregnancy can be a consequence of sexual intercourse. An unplanned pregnancy can be a challenge for anyone, but married couples are much better equipped to provide a stable growth environment for a child. While it is possible for any committed person to give a child a loving environment, studies have shown that children living with 2 biological married parents experience better education, social, cognitive, and behavioral outcomes that do other children on average. By waiting to have sex until you are married, you are increasing the odds that your children will receive the benefits of being raised in a 2-parent, stable home environment. The common feelings of guilt and shame associated with premarital sex are easily avoided. Casual sex is currently viewed as common behavior, and the social expectation is one that leans towards acceptance. Feelings of guilt can be enhanced even more when you believe that you should be able to handle a casual sexual relationship. The ideas behind non-committed sex that are popular today do not leave much room for the feelings of guilt and shame that come up. In a large web-based study of 1,468 undergraduate students, participants reported a variety of consequences. 27.1% felt embarrassed, 24.7% reported emotional difficulties, 20.8% experienced loss of respect, and 10% reported difficulties with the study partner. What does the Bible say about sex before marriage? There are several references in the Bible that says sex before marriage is wrong, but you cannot find a specific verse for it. The verse, "Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires," comes from Song Solomon 2:7, Song Solomon 3:5, and Song Solomon 8:4. God is fine with us having sex, but He wants us to wait until we find the one our heart wants and desires. He wants us to find the person that we're going to spend the rest of our lives together with. God also is willing to forgive you for having sex before marriage. All you have to do is talk to Him and ask Him for forgiveness, and He will forgive you because He is a forgiving man. There is a book that Dr. Ray E. Short, a professor at the University of Wisconsin in Platteville, the book is titled Sex, Love, and Infatuation. How Can I Really Know? In his book, he titled Chapter 10, To Be or Not to Be a Virgin. In this chapter, he lists the 11 facts that are backed up by solid research. These 11 facts are: 1. Premarital sex tends to break up couples. 2. Many men and women do not want to marry a person who has had intercourse with someone else. 3. Those who have premarital sex tend to have less happy marriages. 4. Those who have premarital sex are more likely to have their marriages end in divorce. 5. Persons and couples who have had premarital sex are more likely to have extramarital affairs as well. 6. Having premarital sex may fool you into marrying a person who is not right for you. 7. Persons and couples with premarital sex experience tend to achieve sexual satisfaction sooner after they are married. However, 8. They are likely to be less satisfied overall with their sex life during marriage. 9. Poor premarital sexual habits can be carried over to spoil sex in marriage. 10. Guilt may push a couple into bad marriage. And 11. Premarital sex robs a couple of sexual cement. Unplanned pregnancy. A much higher proportion of married women than of never married women use a contraceptive method, 77% versus 42%, largely because married women are more likely to be sexually active. But even among those at risk of unintended pregnancy, contraceptive use is higher among currently married women than among never married women, 93% versus 83%. Recent data from the National Survey of Family Growth show no significant decline in the overall proportion of unintended births, live births to women who do not want to get pregnant when they did. Between the 1982 and the 2006 to 2000 between the 1982 and the 2006-2010 surveys, the proportion of births that were unintended did decline during these years among ever married, non-Hispanic white women. Women more likely to experience unintended births include unmarried women, black women, and women with less education or income. Increased risk of getting an STD. Be faithful. Have sex with only one other person whom you trust. Having sexual contact with only someone who is not infected means that you won't get an STD from them, and they won't get one from you. Have fewer partners. The more people you have sex with, the greater chances you are of getting an STD. Go with new partners to go get tested. Also, in marriage, you are more honest and should know more about your partner to prevent getting an STD, other than if y'all were married.